right, just making sure that everything is set the way it's supposed to be set. How you doing? Today is Tuesday, May the 28th, I believe it is. Let me make sure. Let me check my calendar here. Yeah, Tuesday, May the 28th, and right now it's about 7:45 in the evening. And if you're watching live, thank you so much for joining live to this session of I don't know what to call this, Equipped Live, the Mario Escobedo Show live. I don't know. It's a live stream on this YouTube channel. If you're subscribed to the channel, thank you so very much for subscribing to the channel. The channel's been growing, more subscribers, more watch time, reviews, all of those things. Each individual video doesn't have a whole lot of views, fewer than 100 each video, but it starts to accumulate, and sometimes it takes time on YouTube for that stuff to grow. But thank you so very much for subscribing, for watching, for commenting, liking, all that stuff. I appreciate that very much. Last week's live stream, last Tuesday, exactly a week ago, last Tuesday, I talked about how I was going to modify the live stream schedule and do live streams on Friday mornings, or Friday, during the day Friday, and I did a live stream last Friday around noontime, more or less. And I'm still toying with the idea of when to do the live stream. It's very possible that I'll keep it on Tuesday night. I like the Tuesday night feel, doing it at night, starting to shut down for the night, all that stuff. Friday, I thought Friday was going to be a good time to do it, being that Friday is technically my day off. But I don't know, Tuesday nights might be a little bit better for doing a live stream on this channel. So we'll keep playing with that. If you have any suggestions regarding when to do the live stream, then please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear when's it better for you for a live stream. But I'll keep toying with that. I'll keep messing with that to see how that works. Well, what I want to do is I want to talk to you about some things. These live streams are a bit more informal than the videos that I do. In the videos, of course, it's a teaching, and I go very methodically through the teachings that I'm doing. And incidentally, right now, I'm in the middle of a 5-part series on how to cast vision. Tomorrow, Wednesday, May the 29th, the second part of this 5-part series comes out. And like I said, it's a 5-part series, and tomorrow's the second one. So have your eye out for that one. You can check that out as soon as tomorrow, and you can check out all 5 videos once they're all completed in the playlist on how to cast vision cast vision like Jesus did. That's a playlist you can find on the channel. But in this live session, 2 things I'm going to share with you. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I preached on this past Sunday. And by the way, there's no script to this. I have an idea of what I want to talk about, just like I'm mentioning to you right now. But sometimes I'll kind of go like squirrel, and go off into something else. And that's okay. In the context of a live stream, that's all right. I may bring some other things in the discussion. That's fine. But I have an idea of what I want to talk to you about. So first, I want to talk to you about what I preached on this past Sunday in our church. As many of you know, I pastor a Spanish-speaking congregation. So what I'm sharing with you here, I said it all in Spanish when I preached it. Right now, we're in our church, we're emphasizing discipleship. We have taken just about everything off of our calendar for 2019 and just focusing on discipleship. And what we've been saying at our church is that we're transitioning the culture. What kind of church do we want to be? How do we want to do church? And so we're talking about discipleship, and specifically being a church that makes disciples, That's what we want to be. That's the kind of church we want to be. And we had a definition of a disciple, and it was a bit long, and we're not going to abandon it, but I also kind of whittled it down a little bit more. But the original definition of disciple that we started off with was a disciple is somebody who is, it's in Spanish, so let me translate it in my head as we're going. A disciple is somebody who follows Jesus, is being transformed by Jesus, and who commits to the mission of Jesus. And so recently I've shortened that to make it a bit more accessible and transportable for the people. And basically I'm just saying it this way from this point forward. A disciple is somebody whose biggest desire in life is to be like Jesus and to live for Jesus. That's what a disciple is. Someone whose biggest desire in life is to be like Jesus and to live for Jesus. In Spanish, it's a bit more economical, not as many words in Spanish. Un discípulo es alguien cuyo mayor deseo en la vida es vivir como Jesús y para Jesús is how we say it in Spanish. And so this entire year, we've been talking about discipleship and what that means and what does it mean to be a disciple and what can you do to grow as a disciple of Jesus. And this past Sunday, I took a little break from kind of the ask. By that I mean, hey, this is what I want you to do. This is what, do this. And I wanted to give people a little bit of a mental, emotional, spiritual break from the ask and tell them, hey, it's just time to rest a little bit. And so for that, I used a very well-known passage of scripture, Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30. Of course, these verses are part of a larger passage starting in verse 25, but I focused only on verses 28 through 30, where Jesus says, come to me. Now, interestingly enough, that's the same type of verbiage that Jesus used when he called his disciples in Matthew chapter 4. Come, right? And here he says, come to me. And then he qualifies who it is that he's calling to come to him. All you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. And I made a distinction that in that call to come, Jesus is identifying two categories of people. Maybe we could even say two categories of disciples: the weary and the burdened. The weary, that word weary, and of course these are spiritual conditions. Jesus isn't talking about a physical condition. These are spiritual conditions. But the weary, that word weary, implies somebody who's been doing a lot of work. Somebody who's fatigued because of a long work day, because of a long journey, something to that effect, and their body is fatigued. They are wasted, physically wasted. Now, Jesus is using that word, but of course, he's given it a spiritual connotation. All of you who are spiritually weary. Now, we know Jesus is talking spiritually because in verse 9, he says, come to me and you will find rest for your souls. So we know that Jesus is taking these words and he's using them, he's giving them a spiritual connotation. And so I identified that those who are weary, okay, those who are weary because of a lot of work and all that, are those who are trying to please God based on their own merits. Those who are trying to please God based on the more they can do. So these are the people who would say, if I could just be the type of person who, fill in the blank, who prays more, who reads the Bible more, who would know more, who could fast more, who could control their temper better, who could control their tongue better. And he could just list off a whole bunch of things. These are the people who are weary. These are the people who are trying in their own ability, in their own strength to please God. There's nothing wrong with trying to be a better person. There's nothing wrong with trying to be a better Christian, to grow as a disciple, to grow as a Christian. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. The problem happens when we want to do that in our own strength, or when we try to rely on our own strength in order to do that. That's where it becomes impossible. I mean, you absolutely cannot, and we will never be able to merit, to earn God's love, forgiveness. I mean, it's all through Christ. And so Jesus is calling those who are weary because of all the work they're trying to do to please God and to prove to themselves and to God that they're worthy of his love, they're worthy of his grace. It tires you. I mean, you can't do that. It's weariness. It makes wearisome. It will make you weary if you're always having to try to prove to yourself and to God that you deserve his forgiveness, you deserve his grace, you deserve his love. That is weariness. That's just it's gonna tire you. And so Jesus issues this invitation. He issues this call to all who are weary. You're tired, and the reason you're tired is that you're trying to do it all on your own. Come, and I'm going to give you rest. The second category of people are those who are burdened. Okay, those who are burdened. And these, the way I describe these people, this category of people, those who are burdened, of course, that word burden implies carrying something heavy on your back. So this can be used in reference to a person who is carrying something heavy, or in reference to a beast of burden, an animal who is carrying something. They are burdened. Now, there's another passage, and I don't think I wrote it down here. I might be able to look for it here real quick from my notes from this past Sunday. But there's another passage. What I'm suggesting here with this one is that Jesus is actually talking about the burden imposed by the Pharisees on the people. All right, now let me see where I've got this. That would be Matthew chapter, oh boy, where is that? Matthew chapter 23, verse 4. I'll bring that up on the screen here. Matthew 23, 4. Talking about the Pharisees, look at what Jesus says. They tie up heavy, cumbersome loads and put them on other people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to lift a finger to move them. That's the same idea of burden, of placing a burden that Jesus is talking about over here in this passage, Matthew chapter 11, verse 28. And so what I see happening is that the Pharisees had placed a burden on the people of Israel. And this is how I describe that burden. The Pharisees maybe would say something like this. Okay, God says to do this, okay? And you want to achieve what God wants you to do, right? Yeah. Okay, God says to do this, but we're telling you to do this, all these things. God wants you to do this, but we're telling you have to do all these things. And so they would pile a burden on top of burden on the people of Israel. So to the point that they were so burdened that spiritually speaking, they couldn't even move. They couldn't even advance to what God wanted for them. And Jesus is telling them, hey, if you're burdened, come to me and I'll give you rest. I'm going to remove all that from you and I'm going to show you what it really means to please God in the right way. What happened was, I think the way I describe it is that the people, because of this burden that the Pharisees had imposed on them, the people became more concerned with pleasing the Pharisees than they did with pleasing God. That's wrong. I mean, you can't do that. And unfortunately, even in our time right now, there are people who have the bad habit of burdening others. If you want to be a true Christian, you have to do this. And instead of helping a person along, really all they're doing is they're being a burden. They're just adding more stuff on top of that. Jesus issues this call to them, come, and I'll give you rest. Now, ironically enough, I just find this interesting. Jesus issues this call and promises rest. And then the way he's going to give rest, this is just ironic, I think. I'm going to give you rest. How? Well, take my yoke upon you. But you end up discovering that Jesus's yoke, as compared to the yoke that we place on ourselves, of trying to do it in our own strength, and compared to the yoke or the burden of others that you have to fulfill their obligations or their religious whatevers in order to please God, compared to that, the yoke of Jesus is so much easier. And a big reason for that is what Jesus says right here, learn from me. And with that, I understand this, that Jesus was committing himself to carrying the burden with you, that he's pulling the yoke with you, that he's not just putting the yoke on you and then leaving you on your own to figure it out on your own or to carry it on your own. No, take my yoke upon you. This is my yoke. I'm carrying it with you. And as we're together pulling this yoke, you're going to learn from me. That provides rest for the person who is wanting to follow Jesus. So that's a little bit of what I shared on my Sunday sermon this past Sunday, May the 26th. And I made it a bit of an abbreviated sermon, and we ended the time with worship. I invited the people forward, and I said, listen, one of the ways that we find rest is by worshiping. We spend time in God's presence in worship. So that's how we finished our service, just by taking some time to worship. So that was good. I had a good time putting that sermon together, preparing that sermon, and presenting it. I had a very good time doing that. Hey, over the past few live sessions and even in the the regular teachings, I have been. Let me see. Is this thing on pause? Is that why some of you left already? I have been sharing with you a book that I'm currently reading. No, okay, this isn't okay. We're still good. A book that I'm currently reading. It's a book that I read before, and I told you that I'm reading it again because I'm just finding incredible value in reading it again. The book is called Deep Work. I'm covering my face. Deep work. The subtitle is Rules for Focused Success in a Distracted World. The author is Cal Newport. There's a link to this book in the description of this live video. That'll take you to Amazon where you can purchase it. I recommend this book. Highly recommend it. This is my second time going through it, and I'm going through it a lot more slowly. I got a lot of benefit from it reading it the first time, but now that I'm going through it again, I'm going through it more slowly. I'm taking better notes. I'm being more careful in my note taking, and I'm implementing. I'm being more deliberate about how I'm implementing the things that that this author describes in the book. And let me share with you some of the things that I'm learning. Let me see. I've got my reading notes here. This is from the second part of the book where he starts discussing some of the rules to be able to enter into deep work. And the first thing that he says is that you have to decide on your depth philosophy. What is going to be your philosophy when it comes to doing deep work? What's going to be your philosophy / strategy? How are you going to approach deep work? And he lists, I believe it's 4 different ways that you can strategize, or 4 different philosophies for doing deep work. He talks about the monastic, which essentially means that you seclude yourself from the world for an extended period of time, and you just work on your deep work project, whatever it is that may be. And he does note that there are very few people who have the luxury of doing this type of deep work, or engaging in this type of deep work philosophy. It's not everybody can do it. It's just you don't have the luxury of doing that. So he does acknowledge that. But it's those people who they just dive into their work. They seclude themselves from the world and from everything else, and they just dive into their work. These are people who don't respond to emails. These are people who just seclude themselves from the world in order to do their deep work. I can't do that. I mean, I have daily responsibilities. I can't do that. So the second philosophy that he mentions is the bimodal philosophy, which recognizes that you have daily responsibilities that you can't abandon completely, but you still might have the luxury of secluding yourself maybe for a day or two and engaging all that time in your deep work. I can do that sometimes. So for example, a few weeks ago, I secluded myself for a week. I wiped everything off my calendar and I took time to seek God for vision. So I can do that sometimes. I can't do that on a regular basis. The most I can get away with is maybe one day out of the week. And I do that sometimes for sermon preparation. If I have an especially busy second half of the week, I'll maybe take Monday or Tuesday and I'll just block the entire day off to do sermon prep. I can do that sometime. But the bimodal philosophy that he talks about here, it's a combination of meeting your weekly responsibilities and taking time on a regular basis to seclude yourself from the world in order to do the type of deep work that you want to do. I might be able to get away with that from time to time, but not really. The third philosophy that he mentions is rhythmic philosophy. This is very different than the other two, because really what this one is that you schedule sessions of deep work. You schedule time when you're going to be doing your deep work. You have too many responsibilities at home or work, or you can't get away even for a day. So what do? You schedule time. So you block off a period of time in your day. Could be in the morning. That's when it works best for me. Could be in the morning. And even if it's an hour and a half, 2 hours, you have that strict schedule, that strict appointment with yourself, and you dive into your work for a 90-minute session, a 2-hour session. And you can't do more than that, but you can do that frequently. Now, I can do that a little bit more. So I'm kind of combining the rhythmic with the modal or the bimodal philosophies of deep work. And this works for me. This rhythmic philosophy, that works for me. I can do that a little bit better because I can wake up at 5:15, 5:30 in the morning and dedicate a solid 90 minutes, even up to 2 hours. I can dedicate solid time to concentrating on one specific task. I can do that. That's more realistic for me within my schedule. I can do that. So that's something else. The final one that he mentions is the journalistic philosophy of deep work. And this is pretty much you fit deep work wherever you can into your schedule. And he talks about how journalists just have to turn on the ability to, they might be doing a whole ton of things and then they just tune everything out and immediately start writing an article or writing a report. and they can just turn it on and turn it off. And he says that takes a lot of practice, and not a whole lot of people can do that. I'm not even interested in doing something like that. Like, I have to block off time to do that kind of stuff. So I'll share with you in another live stream some more stuff, because I'm still going through this, but really helpful stuff, incredibly helpful stuff. And I bring this up because as pastors and church leaders, we have very important work to do, right? We do the work of preparing sermons or teachings, conversations, maybe small group teachings, and that's work that deserves the very best of us. It deserves that our mind be completely engaged in that and not being distracted by anything else. It deserves that our mind be at its freshest, at its most sharp. It deserves that. The type of work we do deserves that type of attention. So, for example, when I'm doing sermon preparation, I take my phone, I put it not only on silent, I turn the volume all the way down, and I put it on do not disturb. And the only calls or texts that can come in are from those who are on my favorites list. So, meaning my wife, my mom, my sister, and my 2 girls. That's it. And even then, if I'm about to go into a session of deep work, I will send a text to my wife, especially because my girls are at school. My mom doesn't necessarily text me during the day, but I'll say, hey, I'm about to do sermon prep, so, I'm not available. And then I'll open up one of my drawers, and I'll put my phone in the drawer, and I'll leave it there. And I seclude myself. No Facebook, no internet, unless I need to look up a word or whatever. But seclude myself, and just for a 90-minute block of time, it's just sermon prep, and just work on sermon prep or work on this teaching. And then I'll take about a 10 or 15-minute break after that time. I put a timer. I put a literal timer, 90 minutes, an hour and a half on my watch. And as soon as that goes off, no matter where I am, I'll just kind of wrap up that thought. And then I'll take a 10 to 15-minute break and just go and vent a little bit. Go take a walk. Just if I'm at church, I'll walk around the building a little bit. Something. I won't get on social media. I won't check email. That's not the time for doing that, because this has happened to you before. One email can come in and it just sticks in there. Or you see one Facebook post and it just sticks in there, and you want to get back into sermon prep or whatever you're doing, and you can't do it because that's just stuck in there. So in that 10 to 15-minute break, I'm not checking social media. I'm not checking email. It's just a time for me to walk away from what I was doing and then refresh a little bit, and then come back and then start another 90-minute session. In fact, I did that this morning. I did several hour-and-a-half sessions. I think I did like 4, something like that. I did several of those sessions. That was the bulk of my day today. And it was just work, 90 minutes, no interruption, no stop, and then 10 to 15-minute break. Disengage, let the steam go off a little bit. And then come back, set a timer for another 90 minutes, and just get in there and work, and then take another break. And that works for me. Now, I can't do that every day. No, I've got meetings, appointments, obligations, visits, etc., phone calls. So I can't do that every day. But there are some days that I can block off, that I'll say, this is what I'm doing, and I block off time like that. And I say this again because the type of work that we're doing has eternal impact. I mean, we are doing work that impacts eternity, impacts the lives and the souls of those people that God has placed under our care. Our sermon prep, our teaching prep deserves the absolute best that we can give it. I mean, it demands our absolute best, and we should give it our absolute best. Stuff comes up, of course. Stuff is always going to come up. But as best we can, we need to give our sermon prep and our teaching prep the absolute best of what we have, the absolute best of our time. So that's what's been going on. And that's what I preached on this past Sunday. That's what I'm working on, reading this book, enjoying it very much. Be sharing more of that book with you in the upcoming weeks. And again, I highly recommend that book. Again, you can find a link to that book in the description of this video. If you're so inclined, you can pick that up, and it will be beneficial to you, I assure you. Now, it's not written by a Christian author. It's not about sermon prep. It's not about ministry, nothing like that. But it has some incredibly good information that I know will be very beneficial to anybody who picks it up. So I deeply, deeply recommend Deep Work. All right. Don't forget, tomorrow, Wednesday, May the 29th, there is the next installment of the series that I'm doing, How to Cast Vision Like Jesus Did, Part 2. There'll be 5 altogether. Part 2 is coming out tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. New video every single Wednesday, 7:15 in the morning. There's a new video all the time. Check those out. Be sure to subscribe, like, share, comment, all those things, so you're always up to date on the latest teachings. And also you help this channel grow, get this message out to more people. Thank you so much for joining me, whether you're on the live stream or you're watching on the replay. I appreciate the time that you took to watch this. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one. God bless.